This is Edward Vajda. I'm going to tell you about my quarter century documenting the Ket language of Siberia, mostly by using traditional field methods, but also over the internet during the past few years. Now, Ket is the sole survivor of a larger language family once spoken across vast areas of central Siberia. The Kets are interesting culturally for being the last hunter-gatherers of interior northern Asia. Yenisei languages also appear to be genealogically related to the Na-Dene family of North America, probably at a time depth of about 6,500 years, as suggested by recent genetic studies. Na-Dene consists of the geographically far-flung Dene subfamily, along with Tlingit and the extinct Ayak language, is probably about 4,500 years old, as also suggested by human DNA studies. About 5,000 years ago, a group of people from deep inside Siberia entered Alaska and mixed with the first people's ancestors of future Na-Dene speakers. Their DNA is found in all Tlingit as well as Dene speakers, but not in other groups of North America's first peoples, whose ancestry derives instead entirely from Ice Age migrations out of Beringia. The migration that brought the mid-Holocene ancestors of Na-Dene populations across Bering Strait can be traced by archaeology to central Siberia. And the Ket people still live in this isolated part of North Asia. There are no railroads or roads connecting them to the outside world, and the whole area was off limits to foreigners during the entire 20th century until after the Soviet Union collapsed. Most linguists studying Ket, such as the pioneer Heinrich Werner, were Volga Germans exiled from European Russia. My long mail correspondence with them led to an opportunity to visit Siberia in 1998. I was able to study the vast trove of archived Ket materials at Tomsk's Siberian Languages Laboratory. But it was impossible to travel to the Ket home villages, which were located many hundreds of miles to the north in an area colder than Tomsk, which only has an average January temperature of 40 degrees below zero. The northern areas are colder. Building on this connection, I was able to return to Tomsk in 2005, and I met two Ket native-speaking women who traveled south from their homes to work at the Siberian Languages Laboratory. And I did extensive documentation work with them there between giving linguistic lectures in Russian at the university. This month of intensive documentation work yielded tremendous amounts of data. And it also resulted in one of the native consultants, Valentina, being sponsored at Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany the next year, where I and my colleagues performed additional documentation work. Interested in additional data and also in the hypothesized linguistic link with the Na-Dene, Max Planck funded an expedition to the Ket home villages in fall 2008. And that trip to Ketlang from my home, Washington State, via Leipzig, required 6 airplanes, 3 trains, and a wild 4.5 hour helicopter ride. There are no roads or railroads linking any of the Ket villages to the rest of the world, so helicopter trips are the only viable access. And helicopter passengers have to share the ride with supplies flown into the Ket villages. And here's what most of central Siberia looks like in the summer from the air: forests, swamps, and billions of mosquitoes. The Ket village with the largest number of speakers is located on the Yelagui River, a tributary of the Yenisei. And Kelag village has about 350 residents, only half of them Kets. Only a handful of fully fluent speakers exist, all over 50 years of age in 2008. The helicopter arrives once a week for half an hour, and it's the only regular link with the outside world. But my extensive prior documentation work with Valentina made it feel like I was coming home, and so I felt at home in the village. The younger generations of Kets understand a little bit of the language, but children speak only a handful of words. This includes certain choice anatomical terms which these kids were proudly enunciating for me, even using the correct syllabic tone. The oldest Ket speakers in 2008 have all now passed away. Uliana, blind since she was young, was one of the very best speakers. Valentina's mother was the last native speaker of Ket who did not speak native Russian. She spoke it as a second language. And Marina, one of the youngest and best speakers, which I worked with a lot, spent most of her time migrating through the forests, and that's how she kept her language. The 2008 expedition tried to document words related to material culture, which was fast disappearing. This is a bear spear called oos, and this is a hand sled called sul. I also went out with Ket people onto rivers, into the forest to participate in traditional Ket practices like berry picking. I kept a notepad and pencil stuffed inside my swamp boots. Some of the best documentation occurred when we paired up two native speakers together. The expedition overall yielded tremendous results before my long journey back home in September 2008 on the season's last steamboat. It took nearly 3 days to reach a town with a road leading to other towns and cities. One result of this field work is published Ket grammars. Another is a 2-volume dictionary with all known Ket vocabulary. After this expedition, I kept in close contact with my expedition partner, Andrei Nefyodov, Siberian-born Russian linguist also affiliated with Max Planck. Andrei was able to make a couple additional trips to Ket areas, and he took my questions with him. The Ket villages themselves had no internet, however, so when Valentina moved unexpectedly to the city of Krasnoyarsk a few years later, it opened up the possibility of Skyping with her whenever Andrei visited her with his computer. And my first virtual interviews yielded material for a chapter on evaluative morphology in Ket, and that was a topic I had not adequately researched in my previous field work. Subsequent Skype interviews allowed me to check the tones and other phonetic features of certain Ket words. It also allowed me to check Ket verbs. Each lexical Ket verb stem has between 3 dozen and 7 dozen grammatical forms. Some of them are missing in the documentation. I was able to check them. And this is important because the Yeniseian verb, the core of it is homologous with Dene languages, with not-Dene languages in general, containing prefix string before a lexical base or a stem that itself contains a fused tense mood aspect suffix. So virtual documentation has helped me fill in various gaps in my understanding of Ket verb morphology. And so in conclusion, as someone who's done most of my Ket documentation in the old-fashioned way, but I was lucky enough to Skype with native Ket speaker during the past few years, I can offer the following advice. You don't know when you'll get an opportunity to Skype, so keep a running journal of new fieldwork questions as they accumulate in your research. Prepare meticulously for an online interview when you know it's going to happen. And yet be flexible in how the interview proceeds, because something could come up where you want to go in a different direction than you planned, just like in regular fieldwork. And yet there's a caveat here. You need to build prior rapport with native speaking consultants. I can't imagine doing virtual fieldwork on the internet without having already intimately known the speakers and already have a friendship with them. Perhaps that's possible, but I don't really have any advice in that regard. Thank you for your attention.